Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters staged a day of national action with demonstrations and marches taking place across the country. Police say around 250 demonstrators gathered on Whitehall outside the gates to Downing Street. At least 2 protesters were carried away by police at Waterloo Station after more pro-Palestine demonstrations. People could be heard chanting "ceasefire now" and "from the river to the sea." British Transport Police says 5 people were arrested. These scenes were captured in North London this afternoon. Some protesters were seen describing Israel as a terror state. Meanwhile, at least 4 people were arrested during a Just Stop Oil protest earlier today. Activists marched from the Shell headquarters in opposition to the approval of more than 100 new oil and gas projects. The group says peaceful protesters are being locked up, while those who it describes as climate criminals are protected. The Israeli military is warning thousands of people to leave the south of Gaza as it tightens its focus on Hamas terrorists there. Warnings issued weeks ago saw scores of people move from the north of Gaza amid the escalating conflict. Leaflets have been dropped by the IDF near the Khan Yunis area, telling people to move again, this time towards the west. Major advertisers are pulling their business from X, formerly known as Twitter, amid a row over alleged anti-Semitism. It comes after the site's owner, Elon Musk, appeared to endorse a post that falsely claimed members of the Jewish community were stoking hatred against white people. The White House called it an abhorrent promotion of anti-Semitic and racist hate. Disney, Warner Brothers and US network NBC are among those who've paused their advertising. The Chancellor says there's a pathway to lower taxes ahead of next week's autumn statement, arguing the economy has turned a corner. Jeremy Hunt says this is the moment to focus on growth after inflation halved over the past year. It's understood he's considering cutting rates on inheritance and business taxes in what could be one of the last fiscal announcements before the next election.
OBR numbers and forecasts will be published on Wednesday at the autumn statement. But there is no easy route to reducing the tax burden. The way we do it is by spending taxpayers' money more wisely, and that means having more productive public services.
This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying "Play GB News." It's now time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour with the help of token woman Cressida Wetton. There you go. And token Italian-Iranian former BBC employee Nicholas DeSanto. We try and have one of those on every show. You're our token one today.
OK, I don't think you'll find many more.
No, well, we're trying.
Which is good for me, yeah.
Yeah, we need to represent people more. How you guys doing? Any bands?
Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm great. I always like this awkward moment at the start of the show where we try and banter in an unscripted way.
OK. I mean, I'm doing back-to-back headliners, so quite pleased with myself.
This is your second night in a row?
Yeah.
It's that diversity. It's because you're the only Italian-Iranian former BBC employee right-wing comedian.
The right spot, the right box to take.
Yeah, and Cressa, you're still rocking the whole female angle.
Yeah, that's my shtick. I'm female.
And I'm the token straight white male. So let's have a quick look at Sunday's front pages then. The Mail on Sunday has, after 5 years, Britain sends plane mutiny rapists back to Somalia with a plush hotel, armed guards and therapy you pay for. How very Mail. The Sunday Telegraph, PM deploys Whitehall officials to Rwanda as revolt grows. The Sunday Express has terror cell sneaks in on small boats. The Sunday Times, Hunt weighs up surprise cut in tax for millions. The Sunday Mirror has staggering 100 billion of Tory waste. Wow, I'd have been all right with £100. The Daily Star on Sunday has razor glass to the beer belly busting berries. And we'll tackle that big story in a moment. Those are the front pages. So we're going to start with the Sunday Express, Cressida.
OK, huge manhunt underway after 6 terror suspects sneak into UK on small boats. So security sources reveal how a team of fanatics on a mission illegally entered the UK. So this is pretty bad, isn't it? The foreign nationals, they've all apparently got links to Islamist groups, and they are believed to be backed by terror paymasters Iran. Any thoughts, Nicholas? That's really your area, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this has the markings of a big spy story, except that the risk is real. Apparently, a unit of MI6 stationed near Damascus had uncovered this plot before the war in Gaza actually started. These are Iranians or supported by the Iranian government. And let's not forget that only a few months ago, the chief of MI5 warned that tens of plots by the Iranian regime in the UK territory had been foiled or discovered against British nationals or Iranian British nationals, dual nationals.
Right.
Very comprehensive, yeah. There was a funny moment there where it came up with comedian on you. I was thinking, this is the most serious story, and Nicholas is like an expert on it. But we also have to somehow do comedy. The only comedic thing I found is that Nigel Farage is on the front, and he's in the jungle, so he's not there to stop the boats, which is normally what he does, right? If there's any...
very unimpressed, though.
Yeah, he's got some sort of goggles on. Poor old Nigel. He's going to smash it, though, isn't he? Have you been watching it? Has it started?
I think it started today.
Oh, it's tomorrow. I'm hearing it's tomorrow. I'm so out of touch. I'm sure he's going to win, though. I blatantly never watched it, so...
You know, he's doing it because he wants young people who don't watch his work to tune in.
Yeah, like me.
But actually, what's happening for people like you and me is that Ant and Dec are suddenly going to get our attention. So
right.
That's nice.
And I'm actually going to see far less Nigel because he won't be on here and he'll be on some jungle show. Anyway, all right, well, I think we've probably nailed that one, even though we only talked about the actual story a bit. Should we have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, Nicholas?
Sure, quite a few interesting stories. Again, we have a big picture of Nigel Farage potentially, getting in shape for that speculated return to British politics. Then on top left, we have PM deploys Whitehall officials to Rwanda as revolt grows. The Tory revolt, again, connected to the story we were just discussing. So this boat situation and illegal immigration has not just cultural identity and social economic impacts, but also security consequences. But the stories we have been discussing, or we've picked to discuss, the first one is Khan misled the public over Ulez benefits. Essentially, ASA, Advertising Standards Agency, is going after Khan in a secret report that has been somehow leaked or given to the Telegraph.
So he's technically wrong now.
Yeah, not just, morally, because this is a hideous tax against the working class people, let's face it, because people who can afford very expensive, green cars wouldn't be bothered by such taxes. It's essentially the white van man, the working class man who has to get about, from places to places around London, making a living, they will be impacted. And now Advertising Standards Agency is going after him. There's another interesting story.
Can I just say something about that quickly? We heard this story a while ago when it was breaking because they launched the investigation. Now it's going to be published. So it's like an update. But how much more, what can actually happen to Khan? Because the Ulez is already as unpopular as it can be. You've got people literally tearing down cameras at their own risk. So they're going to publish this. And what's it going to do to him? He's just basically untouchable, isn't he?
He's our Joe Biden, basically.
He's our Biden in so many ways. He said it was going to reduce levels of nitrogen dioxide, or almost halve levels, some of the adverts said. But it turned out they were based on estimates or modelled scenarios. It's the modelling again. Remember the modelling. Did you want to say anything on this one, Cressida?
No, I'm a huge fan of modelling. I'm not. Absolutely not. No, it's just very satisfying to read it now. I say we, I think I'm a safe company to say this. We've all felt this emotionally for a long time, and now it's official. Great.
Yeah, do I have to be pro-Khan for balance? That's what I'm worried about. We need someone pro-Sadiq
As long as someone else on another show,
Oh, yeah, throughout
because
the day.
it doesn't have to be with... Yeah.
They probably weren't.
Yeah.
Who is pro-Sadiq Khan at this point? Maybe his immediate family.
Pass down the bucket.
Do you want to do something about civil servants?
Yes, civil servants have been the go-ahead by the government to potentially spend as much as 2 weeks overseas, 2 weeks per year overseas, working remotely. And that has angered some people. We know civil servants don't have a good reputation. A lot of people maybe are either envious or rightfully angry, depending on your, attitude. I'd say as long as, because I'm the son of a civil servant, I have been a civil servant at some point, as long as they do work, and let's not forget about as long as they do get any work done. And then the other thing is, a lot of them, at least their union is arguing, have connections overseas, family overseas. With these exorbitant and electricity and energy bills. If you can afford to go to Southern Europe, for example, and work from there, you actually save a lot also on bills.
So they're doing the taxpayer a favour in the end?
In a way. I mean, productivity,
that's good of them,
you can
isn't
be
it?
with your kids.
And do you think they can do the same amount of work from a beach?
I mean, it's already too little, you know, amount of work to be. It's not difficult. My issue with civil servants is when people vote for Brexit or want illegal immigrants deported and they row against the Home Office, against the Home Secretary. That's my issue with them.
Right.
So were you angry or envious of your parents, given that those are the only two
I'm
options?
very envious of my parents who lived in an era when you could have just one salary and,
That's
you know.
true. Yeah, I'm disturbed by some of the findings from the civil service. There are good ones. Dominic Cummings has just done a long podcast interview saying there are really good ones, but they tend to leave quite young because there's just not they don't see anything getting done of any value, and they just see it's a bureaucracy, so they leave, and it's sort of old duffers, as he called them. And then the other thing was that Steve Edgerton report from the Home Office, where this whistleblower in the Home Office said, yeah, we don't do anything. We give ourselves diversity awards, and we try and scupper Suella Braverman's plans. That's basically a good day. So, yeah, a bit suspicious of civil servants going off to the beach for a couple of weeks a year. But what about the Sunday Times, Cressida?
OK, so they're leading with Hunt weighs up surprise cut in tax for millions. But they've got another story that we were interested in. Thousands of migrants may get amnesty. So Home Office ministers are considering granting an effective amnesty to migrants who arrived in Britain illegally and have been left in limbo, facing the prospect of deportation to Rwanda. So it's like they've just thrown their hands up and gone, do you know what? This is a bit of a dog's breakfast. Look, we'll start tomorrow. We'll start anybody that got in already, that's fine. Which is a bit mad, isn't it?
Yeah, they're worried, Nicholas, about the legal challenge and the UN Convention of Refugees, whatever it's called, some UN thing. Can we do anything in this country ever?
I don't know. Australia did a good job. I don't know if they couldn't be bound by the European Human Rights Convention, right? Obviously, they use their navy. They send people to Papua New Guinea and some other island nations. I don't think much better than Rwanda in terms of human rights concerns. You know, so they managed to do that thing. But the numbers are so big that we are bound to find ourselves in a situation like the U.S. when you have so many people who have been here for such long time, then they can claim that they've developed some mental illnesses, they've got married potentially, you know.
Those two go together quite often.
Pardon me?
Those two go together quite often. They've got married, they developed depression.
Exactly. So
Don't say that. Your wife might be watching.
I mean, no, it's too late. She has two young kids, so.
Oh,
She has two young kids. I love
Right now, I mean,
You've disowned
that's
them.
why it's good to be here.
All right, you sound almost worse than Lewis. All right, Nicholas, what about the Daily Star? They've got a big story.
Oh, that's mine as well. Sorry.
Or is it? Or,
It is
that one
mine.
to you.
It is mine.
I thought this was just so you.
No, I don't have a beer belly. I don't know why the cheeky producer assigned this to me, but that's basically it's our soft story, if you like, on so many levels, because we're talking about beer bellies, obviously. So raise a glass to the beer belly busting berries. No exercise needed to lose 3 stones. That's what the paper is claiming. Apparently, there's this berry with almost magical properties that you can just down it and it neutralizes your beer belly effect. I mean, it remains to be seen. I don't know.
Wow.
Don't want to make any promises.
All that time wasted on Ozempic. This is all we needed. Some berries.
I know. So glad Lewis isn't here to talk about this, but I know there's always some new nonsense. And it's always boffins. It's the boffins again in the Star. It's boffins that are.
They were last night as well.
I don't trust these boffins. They just change their minds every day. Basically, weight loss comes down to eat less, be slightly hungry and slightly unhappy. If you feel quite bad and unhappy throughout the day, you're on target. That's always been the case. There's nothing else works.
It's like working with Naomi Campbell, you know, when you're in.
Thank you. I'll think about that during the break. That is it for part 1. But coming up, how bad is Rwanda? How expensive is the NHS? And how dangerous is AI? All answered for you in a minute.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese.
I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with Cressida Wetton and Nicholas De Santo, which means Nicholas of Santo. I've just translated that. Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Yeah, technically.
Spot on.
Yeah, nailed it. Let's do the sun then. And while we've been debating whether or not Rwanda is an awful country, no one considered the feelings of Rwanda, Cressida.
That's right. Out of order. Supreme Court ruling is an insult to my country. Rwandan government blast. And this is written by Yolanda Maloko, who is a spokeswoman for the Rwandan government. And she says that the Supreme Court's highly political judgment on the migration and economic development partnership was frankly insulting to my country. And she's saying that they're looking at inappropriate evidence and that actually is a safe place for refugees. I think possibly what's safe for one person isn't safe for another person, because if you're there on a sort of legal technicality, that's not the same as saying, is it a nice place to live? Could I have lovely prospects there? So I think she's a bit insulted, and she points to the fact that there's already 1,700 Libyans who've been relocated there. And she's saying, well, they're doing all right. In fact, apparently the care they've had has been called exemplary. So she's insulted about this.
She had already said this even months ago, obviously, because this drama has been going on for so long, that being sent to Rwanda should not be seen as a punishment. I mean, unless you come to Britain for benefits, in which case it's a huge punishment. But again, this reveals the hypocrisy of the left and all these human rights so-called human rights activists, asylum seeker activists, and the whole business of lawyers who feed on the legal aid paid to them and, of course, make money on the back of people's desperation. If you're really afraid for your life, and that's the argument, and that's why you're fleeing, obviously Rwanda is not bad, it's not a bad place. Apparently it has the highest growth rate in the whole of Africa, right? But of course, if you have turned down France, you know, and Italy and other places, obviously you cannot be happy with Rwanda either.
Yeah, it is quite insulting, isn't it? It's obviously insulting. I mean, lefties don't like us to say anything bad about all kinds of countries, and then suddenly they're allowed to just say, Rwanda's awful, and then people are going, hey, it's all right.
That's been one of the funny aspects of this whole thing. If you remember, once Trump talked about some of the countries that did send
what do you call
asylum seekers...
them? Don't say it.
I say hellholes, if that's okay, yeah. But, and then it was a big scandal, according to the legacy media. And now you watch these lefties who don't want people to be sent to Rwanda, but they can't just... Why don't you want them to be sent? They can't say, because it's hell.
Because it's a bleep hole,
in their opinion.
I mean, it really bothers me. I've been reading Dominic Cummings' Twitter, which is always entertaining, and he just did a long podcast, and he has been in government, so I find it very interesting. And he's saying that they could solve this so easily. He says it's not even in the top 100 most difficult problems to solve. But they're not. And I'm just worried it's going to drag on, and it's going to be an election issue, really boring. And then Rishi stops a couple of boats, right? And we're all supposed to vote for him just before the election. And then Labour get in, and they start the boats after we just stop them. They send more boats. Like, they, you know... What do you think, Cressida? Is it just going to be... Why can't...
Well, I don't know if any boats are going to get stopped. We might have a lovely amnesty, as we just heard about in the Times. I don't know. I don't know that she's... I suppose she is insulted, but it's also about money, isn't it? Because it will be other countries giving money to this scheme in order for it to work. So she's making a big song and dance about how we'll take anybody, you know, we don't care who you are and what your background is, and good for you, that's lovely. But at the same time, they will get cash for having these migrants, so that sweetens it all a bit, doesn't it? Helps the assimilation.
That's the key. We want them to have a great new life in Africa, but we do need investment. She does say, like, give us the money, show me the money, basically. OK, well, let's do the I. And the NHS does not need ever-increasing amounts of money to improve. That's where I differ from the NHS, Nicholas. I want the money.
I'm with you on that. But, you know, this is quite an interesting... For the first time in a long time, I agree with somebody from Labour. And this is a confusing time, obviously, because the Tories are not...
Like, who am I?
The Conservatives...
You're like Charlie Sheen in Wall Street, existential crisis. Sorry, carry on.
But in my defence, it's not really my fault or our fault when we have a Conservative government, which has been anything but Conservative, taxing us to record high levels. And then we have Labour, to be specific, the Shadow Health Secretary, that's Wes
Streeting.
Wes Streeting, thank you. And basically, the argument here is that, you know, it takes more than just money to pour into the system. And if the system is a corrupt one, if the system is broken, if the system is a vortex, there's no point just throwing more cash at it, hoping that it will, just get back on its feet. And I think it's a very reasonable argument.
It's very reasonable, but I think we should check in with him again just after the election and see if he still feels the same amount of reasonableness.
I agree. That's what I was going to say. I mean, will Labour act? He says, oh, Rachel Reeves is all fiscally conservative and all this. Labour are going to get in, they're going to spend a load of money on the NHS, and they're going to say we're patching up the Tory gaps from austerity and all this, because that's what they'll have to do. I mean, what is his other plan? Maybe it's not in this piece, maybe he has a brilliant plan.
It is not, actually.
There's no
I was waiting for any other plan.
His plan is, it's not just money, but what is it? Sort of brilliant. Does he disrupt the industry?
I've got a list I'd like to send him, you know, about the problems and the things that go wrong. NHS culture, I mean, not that I use it that often, but... it's an old-fashioned institution, isn't it? Wouldn't you just love some kind of sexy marketing consultants to get in there and maybe teach them a bit about customer service and all that sort of stuff, and also educate the population, right? Because we need to spend so much money because everybody's not eating their berries, and I think we could do more as a nation to look after our own.
And too many boats are joining in,
well,
just to have a call back to the main story. Yeah.
So many problems.
Yeah, I do wonder if you can finally campaign on the NHS reform, because normally it's an election loser, and only Labour are allowed to do it, because if the Tories do it, they're heartless. This is why Wes Streeting's talking about it. So do you think people are finally open to actually campaigning on the issue of we need to do something about the NHS?
I think the NHS has found some sort of a godlike status, or has become the religion of state, you know, ever since those... even before that, but ever since those Thursdays,
you know...
Yeah, the pots and pans. Well, don't you think it lost that after with the waiting lists?
I totally agree, but the pots and pans is very powerful, isn't it? Because if you get somebody to declare something in public, they're much less likely to go back on it later on. So they're very smart there. But...
OK, interesting. All right, let's do the Sunday Express. And pro-Palestine protesters have stormed the Bull Ring shopping centre. When will Birmingham cease to occupy their rightful land, Cressida? See, it's a bit
Palestine
sarcasm.
Protesters storm shopping centre amid calls to shut city down. So, yeah, there's been a demonstration. It was monitored by the West Midlands Police. Monitored, not policed. The police are monitoring now. But officers could not stop a stream of those involved getting inside the giant mall when they reached the centre of Birmingham's second largest city. So, and then there was a bit of arguing outside with the security. There was more people wanted to go in, but they were stopped. And the march was organised by the Birmingham Palestine Action Group and came shortly after Labour MP Steve McCabe's office was picketed during a surgery with his constituents that morning. And I do feel a bit sorry for MPs at this point, because it's pretty scary stuff, isn't it? You know, we've had the murder of Joe Cox and David Armis. It's not impossible that somebody in that group might be violent towards you.
And Gove was surrounded the other day, and Gove, by the way, was visited 6 times by the person that ended up killing Sir David Amess. So, yeah, it's a real thing. It's horrific. But, yeah, I mean, Nicholas, I'm like you with the previous story. I find myself agreeing with Keir Starmer on this issue, and I feel all weird, because they're shouting, who the F doesn't vote for a ceasefire? Starmer, shame on you. So it's the simplification of the issue, and it's become this high-status opinion just to be pro-Palestine and have an oversimplified view of it. But are they going too far? Because there's so many marches now in so many parts of the country. I just wonder if they're going to be the new Just Stop Oil, and people are eventually going to get sick of it.
It's a true and proper pressure group. And pressure group is an understatement, because we have millions of people with these kind of feelings, which I don't obviously share. But again, the problem is a demographic one. When you bring in millions of people who have totally a different worldview and value system, this is the result. But to go towards the more light-hearted aspect of it, if we can call it like that, they're demanding a ceasefire because we demand a ceasefire, they say. Have they forgotten that Britain no longer controls that territory? I mean, who are you to demand ceasefire? I mean, what are, and even if all these MPs had voted for ceasefire, they just don't want a ceasefire. And again, to stay on the light-hearted aspect, one of those memes by Babylon Bee this week showed Cain after he had killed Abel, demanding a ceasefire. I mean, who the F doesn't want a ceasefire? Yeah, Abel, or, you know, the Americans after they got bombed in Pearl Harbor, attacked in Pearl Harbor, wouldn't want a ceasefire.
Yeah, you could argue we just had a ceasefire. How did that go? Yeah, very difficult.
There was a ceasefire until 7th of October, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was. I know. All right. Well, let's move on and do the Mail on Sunday. And the CEO of OpenAI has been fired, though hopefully not by an AI, because that would be quite scary, Nicholas. You don't have to laugh at my name.
By the AI. That's exactly the issue. So this is a fascinating story. Sam Altman was fired as boss at ChatGPT from OpenAI over board's fear he wasn't considering safety implications of new tech experts have warned could destroy the world. So this is quite an interesting story. Sam Altman was a so-called wunderkind wonderkind who propelled ChatGPT into the fame that almost everybody knows it today. It was launched only a year ago, exactly in November 2022, made it a commercial success, the talk of the town. OpenAI obviously initially was only a research, no-profit operation. Today it's very much commercial. At some point, he and Elon Musk were co-CEOs in the board. Now, he has had a fallout with his board because they say, as the title suggests, that they were a bit worried about the pace of this thing and some of those, end-of-time Armageddon-like concerns that we hear, or we sometimes have nightmares about, GPT or AI taking over the world, firing us, killing us, or whatever. But there are experts who say, look, there are more, not so dramatic concerns that we need to discuss. For example, OpenAI deceiving consumers by removing, and that is something under investigation actually, information about products or actually plagiarism or things like that. Not necessarily end of times concerns.
That seems like quite low-level stuff to get fired over, though, doesn't it? I feel like this guy's a bit of a crazy
The board
guy.
has made it clear it was over
It wasn't the plagiarism.
No, definitely not.
Doesn't this guy sound like a kind of villain in a movie? He was like, there was safety concerns, he wasn't candid about what he was doing.
He's
the guy with the lust for power that goes, we will use this to destroy the world.
We kept hearing him in the other room doing an evil laugh, But then on the other hand, he built the band, man. Like, it's
his thing.
To be your thing. And
but he went insane with power.
What kind of contract did he have that said, yeah, you can fire me if I get out of hand?
Well, that's what I'm worried about. I mean, when it says here, there was a blunt assessment, they've given this thing, the board no longer has confidence in its ability to continue leading OpenAI. That sounds like it's written by an AI. And that's why I'm sticking with he was fired by an AI that got out of control theory. Completely made up, of course. And
all the more reason to be concerned about.
Absolutely. I'm terrified. But should we very quickly look at this one in the Metro? And Elon Musk's new rocket has been lost. Annoying when that happens, isn't it, Chris?
So annoying. Elon Musk's SpaceX X loses Starship rocket, but engineers say it's still a success. So this is like another Titan sub. This is like rich guys playing with posh toys. So he's got this rocket, and he experienced what engineers are calling rapid unscheduled disassembly, which means it fell apart. So this rocket's made of two parts. There's a heavy bit called the super booster or something, some kind of booster, and you need that to get away from Earth because of the gravity, but it's heavy. And then you've got the rest of the spaceship that can go off to the moon or whatever it's going to go and do. And then when it leaves the moon, it doesn't need the super booster. That's gone. However, they didn't come apart properly, so this thing came spiralling down to Earth, dumped a load of garbage that Greta's going to be very unhappy about. However, they're still saying it's a success.
I know, I love their actually. I love their optimism. They're like, the first stage looked beautiful, and then it blew up and we lost it. But it was amazing. You should have seen the flip manoeuvre and the hot
This was the second time in 7 months. But, you know, Edison was quoted to say, I just discovered another way not to make that light bulb. And I just wanted to say rapid, unscheduled disassembly can also be told to what happened to Liz Truss's government.
Nice.
That's right, and it happens to me every time I go out drinking with Bruce Devlin, actually.
Wow, shocking news. And a great topical reference there, Nicholas, from about, how many, 6 months ago, whatever it was. But anyway, that is it for part 2. But coming up, Elon Musk goes nuclear and why bin Laden was a great guy, according to an idiot. See you in a minute.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese.
I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get into it with the eye. And Elon Musk is going thermonuclear. It was only a matter of time before he developed the technology, Nicholas.
Yeah, definitely. Elon Musk threatens thermonuclear lawsuit as Apple, Disney, and others, of course, pause X X ads amid anti-Semitism storm. So essentially, a lot of big corporations from Hollywood, from Silicon Valley, Apple, Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Comcast, Lionsgate, Paramount, Sony Pictures, IBM, you name it, they have paused their adverts on X, formerly known as Twitter, we are kind of obliged to say, accusing the platform of running anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic posts, and also accusing Elon Musk of endorsing anti-Semitic accusations, something that he has denied. I essentially think that the pitchfork mob have taken out the pitchforks again for Elon Musk ever since he took over Twitter, made it a truly free speech platform. And let's not forget, these are competitors of Twitter, because although on Twitter we don't watch movies, but we watch videos, potentially he can come up with another approach to put more content on that. And all of these names that I mentioned are competing for our time, for people to be either on Twitter or on Apple TV, Disney, Discovery, and so on. So this is cancel culture today. If you are an individual and they don't like you, they want to get you fired. And if you are a company, just like GB News as well, they go after the advertisers, because that's how they put you under a chokehold.
Yeah, it's a good point. They're a competition and they're ideological opponents as well. But the original post he was referring to, he was saying someone had told the truth, because they were talking about, he was saying that Jewish people are now realising that this mass immigration is not actually good for them. So I don't think it was an anti-Semitic point. He was just saying there's a certain kind of irony or awareness perhaps that we need to have, that actually, Jewish people have often been on the left, and they've often been suspicious of nationalism for perhaps good reasons, right? But the irony is now, OK, immigration is not working out for you because lots of people we're bringing in don't like you, pretty bluntly, and he's agreeing with that. So I don't think that's anti-Semitic. He has a massive problem with the ADL, who are ostensibly a Jewish organisation, but don't necessarily have the best interests of Jewish people at heart over issues like Palestine. And they don't talk about that so much, and they talk about leftist issues instead. So, I mean, I'm perhaps unsurprisingly with Musk. And he's also called out anti-white racism, which is quite bold, which hardly anyone's talking about. For the richest man in the world to be taking a big stance on that. I mean, white people he's the only thing more hated than a straight white man. He's a straight white South African man, which is the only thing more
And he's successful, mega rich, loads of fit birds, women. He's having the time of his life. But this tweet, though, I mean, the language, I can't even say all of it on here. I'm deeply disinterested in giving the tiniest S now about Western Jewish populations coming to the disturbing realisation that those hordes of minorities, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's strong stuff, considering some of the things we've seen on Twitter. So you can't blame people for sort of being horrified. Although I agree, I mean, he's talking about very specific people, isn't he?
Yeah, it was strong stuff, and it was maybe not that tactful of Musk to go in so hard, but I think his heart's in the right place. What he's trying to say is my point. But yeah, he has been maybe a bit reckless. But and just to be clear as well, he's going against Media Matters and all those, and he's going hard for all of them, because they were misleading about how they represent. They sort of posted things that were misleading Twitter X user experience, and he's saying you've misrepresented the amount of adverts that appear and all these kind of things to deliberately defame the platform.
Media Matters are one of these faux, fake fact checkers, and I always say, who fact checks the fact checkers? These are leftist organizations with a leftist agenda, and ADL, again, Jewish organization, but no less than Ben Shapiro, prominent Jewish, Orthodox Jewish American commentator, has big issues with ADL. So it's not just Elon Musk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard you say who fact checks the fact checkers. He does always say that, guys. Let's do the Mail on Sunday. And a trans horror writer has praised Osama bin Laden. Oh, it must be any day in 2023, Cressida. This
is the most headline ever. Critically acclaimed transgender horror author hails Osama bin Laden's principled destruction of Twin Towers months after sharing her desire to slit J.K. Rowling's throat. Whoa!
Totally normal.
Totally normal. Gretchen Felker-Martin on Thursday joined the chorus of admiration for Al-Qaeda, spiked by this nonsense on TikTok. Bin Laden's love letter to America has suddenly become the biggest download ever, more than Nick's podcast, I believe.
Shocking.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, this is what she wrote on Twitter. Can pretty safely state that bin Laden and I do not agree on much, but blowing up the World Trade Center is probably the most principled and defensible thing he did.
Wow.
Oh,
This is just this mad revisionism we're getting now, this kind of historical illiteracy, this cultural relativism. I feel that young people have been primed for this by universities and by social media echo chambers, and soon they're just going to be saying, hey, Hitler was all right, guys, hear me out. And also, this person had previous, by the way, in the past, this same person had said, said the huge crime of 9/11 is that the S we do every day overseas gets done to us exactly once.
But none of them really know. I feel like they don't know what they're talking about. I feel like there's no developed Jungian shadows here. They've never seen evil, so they just assume there isn't any.
Right.
And it's like, no, when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time, you know.
Right.
And it's like, I don't think they can see the difference between... I don't think they
the reality of violence and reality in general.
Yeah, because, to be fair, most of us... I mean, why didn't they make us read Solzhenitsyn at school? I don't know, but they didn't, and here we are.
Yeah, because after October 7, we had people saying, oh, this is a great moment, and I think there's a real disconnect from real-world violence when you're just some young idiot on the internet. What do you think, Nicholas?
Yeah, I agree. In my age, when I was at university, which wasn't too long ago, it was Che Guevara, at least in my part of Europe, and the T-shirts iconically and ironically, you know, commercialized and capitalized, and these people wouldn't recognize or acknowledge that Che Guevara was a murderer. And even if you force them to read Solzhenitsyn, and some of them do know about the gulags and all that, engineered famine, what happened to the Ukrainians, for example, and all that, they would say, no, well, you know, because the Soviet Union were under duress and under siege, and there was too much hostility, and the Italian communists talk about comrades who make mistakes when it comes to, you know, the likes of Stalin. Yep. So ultimately, it's just a lost cause. I think.
Naively thought some of the footage we saw on Twitter in the last few weeks would be a kind of would snap you out of that. You know, some of the stuff, soldiers holding babies, just it's like broke my brain.
They create this moral equivalence. They say, well, no less than the Secretary General of the UN, Guterres, said in his statement, let us not forget that these attacks, Hamas attacks, did not happen in a vacuum. You know what else did not happen in a vacuum? The invasion of Poland by the Nazis, because Germany truly and understandably had been unfairly punished by the Versailles Treaty. So does that mean we can say, well, it didn't happen in a vacuum, guys?
Good point. Let's move on and do the Sunday Express. And the number of people marrying their cousins in Bradford is falling. Finally, some good news, Nicholas.
Yeah, finally some good news. This is Bradford, isn't it? The UK city where loads of locals marry their cousins, but the number is starting to fall. You know, this is one of those traditions that I was talking about, the clash of cultures and all that. But apparently the new generation is less interested. And also, let's not forget, there's more mobility. So they rebel against arranged marriages, and oftentimes these arranged marriages are marriages between cousins. We're talking about especially people, or maybe exclusively, I'd hope so, people of South Asian descent or background.
Well, I'm amazed nobody's made a West Country joke, actually. I think it's still,
do you want to make one?
still rampant there.
I want to gig in that area, so I don't want to alienate people.
Yeah, they're saying, like, staying longer in education, the knowledge about the sort of birth defects and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's got to be the leading...
That's
I
big.
mean, surely that's the leading... I'd like to know if it's on the decline in other countries as well, because if you know it's going to lead to birth defects, pretty strong incentive not to do it, isn't it?
Yeah. OK, well, I feel we should move on from that controversial story to another really controversial story in The Independent. And is the term coconut, when used as an insult, racist? I'm going with yes, Chris.
Is the term coconut controversial, racist, or both? Well, of course it's racist. I mean, it relies on race, doesn't it? If you don't know, it's a phrase that's used to... Well, perhaps we should read this before I start going. We should always define our terms before we start arguing, shouldn't we? Mm-hmm. So the idea is that if somebody is perceived as behaving like a white person, whatever that means, but they're actually a person of colour, they get called a coconut. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this refers to the infamous poster or slogan somebody was holding in these pro-Palestine demonstrations, in which Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman were depicted under a palm tree with coconuts.
Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, it's like Uncle Tom. It's a kind of, it's a sort of tribal mentality. It's a collectivist thing. It suggests that integration is bad. It's basically you have certain views. You're a traitor to your people, so you're a coconut. It's a horrible...
I have been on the receiving end of this, although never been called a coconut because I'm not really brown, but I'm also not Anglo-Saxon or technically, strictly speaking, white. And this is the ugliest form of, in my experience, racial prejudice, because just by being someone who is not Anglo-Saxon or technically white or of a migrant background, people assume that you have to vote with the Labour, you're Italian, so you have to be anti-Brexit, and if, God forbid, you are Christian or you want small government or smaller taxes or no immigration, they call you all names. Maybe not coconut in my case, but I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And they cite Kehinde Andrews, who called whiteness a form of psychosis, and they're citing Dr. Shola. Enough said. That is it for part 2. But coming up in the final section, why obese people are being targeted by drug companies and young people are refusing to drive. How dare they? See you in 2 minutes.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final section of Headliners. Let's get right into it with the Sunday Telegraph and a heartwarming story about a man known as the Steve Jobs of 3D printed guns. Inspiring stuff, Nicholas.
Inspiring stuff indeed, also with some dark undertones. Developer of world's most successful 3D printed gun, unmasked as incel extremist Jacob Duygu. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He was of Kurdish descent, moved to Germany when very young, presumably, if not born in Germany. He'd served with the German armed forces. He was fascinated with guns, and ultimately he became somebody who believed that gun ownership is a right to defend yourself against the tyranny, and pretty much in line with the First Amendment in the US. The problem was that he also was revealed later after his suspicious death to have some extremist views in terms of support for Nazis. Although of Kurdish origin himself, he wanted to eliminate Muslims. In these views attributed to him. What happened was that he came up with this fantastically or incredibly easy to produce 3D printed gun, functional with very easy instructions, and that is his legacy, which has made a lot of institutions, police forces all over the world very concerned about
incredibly worrying.
The ease with which
printing their own guns, like some sort of David Cronenberg movie. And he said he had a huge list of grievances, especially against women in the state. Well, who doesn't, to be fair? But
oh my goodness!
He decided to do something about it.
But he obviously was a bad guy.
I feel enormously sad. It's another Elliot Rodger type thing, isn't it? It's this guy who hasn't got anything left. Also, he had autism, so he was hyper-focused on one thing, and then he finds something he's good at, creating make-it-yourself guns. I mean, it's just tragic.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's do the Observe then with a story about targeting fat people with drugs to make them thin enough to work. Is this the kind of innovation we need to get Britain growing, though not physically, of course, Cressida?
Revealed, obesity jab maker discussed targeting benefit claimants with UK government. So it's actually the case that obesity jab maker Novo Nordisk suggested to senior government officials that they could profile benefit claimants so that those most likely to return to work could be targeted with its weight loss injections. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I think it's almost a good thing, right? Who doesn't want to be targeted with weight loss medication? God, hit me up, fantastic. But clearly, huge ethical concerns.
Yes, the almost is quite key, because it's all a bit eugenics-y. It's a bit China. What do you think, Nicholas?
A bit, well, I wouldn't go as far as eugenics-y, but I'd say a bit cynical. Let us not forget that, and this is a recurrent story, NHS is under huge pressure. Our coffers are empty, financial resources depleted for one reason or another. So at some point, and just this week, Jeremy Hunt announced that people who don't find jobs after 18 months, if they haven't tried enough, then their benefits will be cut. So the government has to make tough decisions. And if somebody losing a little bit of weight can go back to the work market, to the job market, and be productive,
just give them
I mean, is it that bad?
Well, no, of course you're pro it, but you guys also gave us Mussolini, so let's all calm down.
But
you're welcome.
It comes alongside wraparound support, such as back-to-work counselling. So there you go. There's
that's nice,
a nice cuddly bit.
And the firm's called Novo Nordisk, which just sounds like the baddie in a Rocky movie to me. Let's do the Sunday Times. And young people are giving up on driving. If only they'd give up on marching, Nicholas.
Tell me about it. Why 3/4 of young people aren't learning to drive? So this is quite surprising, because in my day, again, people couldn't wait to, get to 17 or 18, depending on your country, and get your driver's license. Today, only 1 in 4 people aged 17 to 20 have a full driving license in the UK, of course. And there are different reasons mentioned for it. Essentially, the cost of buying a car, cost of insurance, that's terrible. We know, those of us who know. Alternative modes of transport, but also COVID. There's a huge backlog, which means it's no longer like before, when you could take as many lessons as you wanted and then go and do your test in your slot. Now, if you are not ready for that slot, you will lose it, and then you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, but they've made it hard on purpose, haven't they? I mean, I got rid of my car because it's MOTs, tax, it's all relentless, and they've made it hard on purpose, to stop you driving. It's the eco-zealots, it's the WEF.
Well, this is it. If they're being told it's the end of the world, then they're not like... I mean, I found it so difficult to learn to drive. I finally got there after 5 tests. It was horrific. It was the most boring thing. I didn't care. It was expensive. Do you hate having to spend money on something you don't want to do?
And now they're coming up with Ulez and 15-minute cities, so it's a disincentive.
Waste of time. They're all going to get the bus.
All right, nailed that one. Let's do the Sunday Times. And children's brains are not harmed by screen time, so it's just their morals then, Nicholas.
I'm taking this to my wife because this is a big source of friction. I have 2 kids, 5-year-old, 1.5 years old, and they love watching stuff on YouTube, and they have to basically, in their defense and in my defense, I use YouTube because I'm raising them trilingual, right? But my wife has read something, I don't know, Mumsnet or somebody, you can author a book with 12 pounds on Amazon and sell it, I don't know where she has read that this is terrible and this is devastating and satanic. So I'm going to say that essentially, in a nutshell, Oxford Oxford University, Cambridge University, and some US institutions, they have done research based on data for 2 years on a big group of teenagers and kids, and they have come up with this finding that there is no correlation between people watching and the amount of people being on screen, YouTube, TV, video games, you name it, and their brain development, their cognitive ability, and their well-being.
Amazing. So you just get a kid and it's as clever as it's going to be, whatever you do to it.
This is the best story given to me by the producers of Headliners. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'd like to know what the content is. What are they watching? Are they watching Headliners? I don't know.
We can hope so, in which case their brains are fine and their morals. Let's then very quickly have a look at the Mail on Sunday. And which Sex and the City character are you most like? This story coming to you from 1998, Cressida. I don't know how this has got in. I'm so sorry to everyone.
Thank God we have the woman, the token woman of Headliners.
Oh, God, I heard that apparently, I'll read the headline. Are you a Carrie, Samantha, Charlotte or Miranda? Scientist claims all singletons fit into 4 categories. Take the test to find out which one you are. I heard the other day that Sex in the City, in fact, from Louise Perry, who's writing against the case against the sexual revolution, Sex in the City was written by a gay man about the way he thought your sex life ought to be. So it's not necessarily a guide for young women. Anyway, so Sex and the City might not be the ideal place to turn to for dating advice, but it's fair to say the show hides an important lesson about the psychology of singledom. So neither of you watched it at all?
I watched it. It was awful, and it's kind of responsible for a lot, because the creator of it actually said she regretted not having children, so it's kind of sold a lie of feminism to a generation, a kind of lifestyle they regretted.
Wow.
We've got 20 seconds. Anyone want to comment?
Do you think you're... No, you're married, aren't you? So you must be the Charlotte, because Charlotte is a just May singleton. I don't know what that means.
At least I'm faithful, or... Well, let's go with Charlotte. I'd take Charlotte over Samantha any day.
I never thought I'd do a show where Nicholas DeSanto discusses whether he's Charlotte or Samantha, but we got there. I think we've pretty much run out of time. Thanks, guys. Show's pretty much over, so let's have another quick look at Sunday's front pages. So, the Mail on Sunday has, after 5 years, Britain sends plane mutiny rapists back to Somalia with a plush hotel, armed guards and therapy you pay for. The Sunday Telegraph has, PM deploys Whitehall officials to Rwanda as revolt grows. The Sunday Express goes with terror cell sneaks in on small boats. The Sunday Times, Hunt weighs up surprise cut in tax for millions. The Sunday Mirror, staggering 100 billion of Tory waste. The Daily Star, raise a glass to the beer belly-busting berries. And that is it for tonight's show. Thanks to Cresta and Nicholas. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. If you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, good night, good morning, and God bless.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese.